Like if I say I'm a fan of Jordan Peterson, knowing that many people will receive that and go, oh, you're a fan of the guy who's on Twitter, who's calling people retarded, calling women bitches. Like, am I still a fan of the guy? Of course. Like unofficially. I'm just not going to go around telling people that. Like the reason I have these conversations, the reason I'm interested in anything is because I believe that the answers to pursuing these questions provide utility. What the nature of language and the brain is helps us understand how we should act, and it helps us, decide what is ethical and decide how to operate in a complex world. Well, some philosophical questions they're not real questions at all. What's north of the North Pole? Well, it sounds like a real question, but it's not real. What time is it on the sun? It sounds like a real question, but it's not real. Is it true? Is it, it's like the metaphysical stuff. It gets complicated. Yeah, I've seen you comment on my videos for some time, so I appreciate it. And I think you said you wanted to talk maybe about some morality stuff to rehash some Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris discussions, basically, or do you want to kind of introduce yourself and your channel and what you're about and all that?
Yeah, sure. I basically got interested in philosophy through Sam Harris and his podcast. He kind of opened the door to all different kinds of concepts that I'm now really interested in and that my channel focuses on. So free will, morality, whether it's objective or subjective, what role does religion play in today's world? And then also like societal issues that are current right now, like the gender stuff that you also love talking about, and that Sam Harris also touches on sometimes. So that's kind of what I'm really interested in.
Sure. So you're a Sam Harris adherent, like I am a Jordan Peterson Maps of Meaning adherent to some degree.
You could say that, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, there's a bunch of things we could discuss then. Is there something in particular that you wanted to start off with, like a particular claim I made in a video or something, or?
Yeah, no, I'm interested where you stand on Jordan Peterson right now, because I know that it's you made a video recently where you said you can't any longer claim officially that you're a Jordan Peterson fan because of some stuff that he said. So I just want to know, what's your current position?
Yeah, well, I think his Twitter antics are destructive enough that it makes it easier for people who might otherwise listen to him to be able to discredit him. And I also think that in consequence makes it easier for people who might otherwise listen to me to discredit me. Like if I say I'm a fan of Jordan Peterson, knowing that many people will receive that and go, oh, you're a fan of the guy who's on Twitter, who's calling people retarded, calling women bitches, all this different stuff. It's like, I just, I don't want to associate myself with that because I think the ideas he puts forward are important enough and separate enough from him, which he himself says all the time. He's like, I'm just articulating ideas that have been around forever. I'm like, okay, well, the true Jordan Peterson fan is not a Jordan Peterson fan. The true Jordan Peterson fan is a fan of the ideas he puts forward. So I'm more interested in those. And I think it's, arguably it in the long run does him a better favor, or does his image a favor to have people that are not going along with whatever he says on Twitter and just more interested in the maps of meaning, fundamental stuff that he puts forward. So there's am I still a fan of the guy? Of course, like unofficially. I'm just not going to go around telling people that. I'm not like I wouldn't say like I disavow Jordan Peterson. I don't like Jordan Peterson anymore. I'm not going to refer to myself as a fan because I know that, people can take that the wrong way. It's sort of like libertarian. Like, am I a libertarian? In the way that most normal people kind of think about it, yeah, pretty much. I'm for the government staying out of taxes and my social life and all that. But knowing that people associate libertarianism with Gary Johnson getting booed at a presidential election for suggesting that driver's license should be okay. I don't know if you ever seen that video.
I haven't, no.
There's a libertarian presidential convention, and they ask everyone, should the government issue driver's license? And they're all, one was like, hell no. What's next? A license to make toast in my own damn toaster? And then Gary Johnson, who was the front runner, was like, well, I think we should see some basic competencies for people to drive. And everyone goes, boo. And I'm like, oh, I'm still a libertarian in the sense that, you know, sure, that could accurately describe my belief, but I'm never going to call myself a libertarian because this is what people associate it with. So it's really an optics thing to some degree.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
I know what you mean. I got to see that video. That sounds pretty ridiculous.
Yes.
But I saw your conversation with Vosh, and there that's kind of the reason why I wanted to talk with you about morality. So where do you think morality is like moral statements are real or not? Like,
yeah,
also, what's Jordan Peterson's position? Because I mean, I've followed Jordan Peterson for a very long time, and I'm probably not as big of a fan as you, but I have a
former fan as me. But yes, just kidding.
Former fan, sorry. But I don't know, like, is he a moral objectivist? Or, I mean, sometimes he almost sounds like a postmodernist in some situations. So what do you think?
Yeah. In that debate with Vosh, I do somewhat, not entirely, but somewhat regret not addressing the moral anti-realism thing he brought up, because I sort of just skirted around it because I was more interested in talking to him, the person, rather than him, the person who puts ideas out there as if they're disembodied concepts that aren't related to him. Moral realism versus anti-realism. I would say my reading, I don't think that dichotomy covers the whole picture. It's sort of like objective versus subjective. Like there's an in-between level of analysis that I don't think our language is caught up on. So like intersubjective is kind of like objective, right? Do you understand what I mean by that?
Yeah, I think so, but maybe you could elaborate.
Yeah, like, so if we're talking about something, what's objectively true? So, you know, epistemology before morality. So is it objectively true that this is a blue shirt or a blue square on my shirt? Would you say that that's objectively true?
It is, yeah.
Right. I would agree. But technically, it's not the case, because color only exists in your perception. So in someone who is colorblind, and I don't think blue would be a good example, but like red, green, or something like that, like a colorblind person would not be able to identify that and say that that's objectively red, right? The color as it manifests in our experience is phenomenological. It's subjective. And the fact that you and I both see the same color means it's intersubjectively, it's blue or it's green or whatever. But to say it's objective, it gets squirrely there, right? Like, is the experience of blue independent of?
But I'm sure you'd agree that the wavelength that we call blue, that is real. That is objectively real.
Yes, but the quality of the experience of seeing it, the phenomenon, I don't necessarily think that's objective per se.
But yeah, I think that is. Wait, sorry. I got some technical. Are you still here?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Well, that is, I think, a common point of confusion, because, of course, something can be subjective to your mind. Like the experience of color would not exist if you weren't here. Like, it's dependent on your brain. So, but the statement that you have an experience of color right now, that is an objectively true statement. So,
sure.
I remember watching this Cosmic Skeptic video where he tries to argue, based on this color analogy, that moral statements or morality is subjective, because even if we all agree that pain is bad, like suffering is bad, we want to maximize well-being. That's like everyone agreeing that blue is the best color for painting a room, for instance. So it then is objectively true to say, okay, we should paint given that we value the color blue so much, we should paint the room blue. So it's objectively true to do that. It makes sense to do that, but that we value the color blue, that you can't say this is objectively true, but or that blue is the best color is objectively true. You couldn't say that,
right?
But what you can say is objectively that we value the color blue, and that's the same situation I think we find ourselves in with morality. Our
like reduction of suffering,
such that we value well-being. We can't.
Right.
There's no way to around that. So yeah.
Okay. So yeah. Yes, and here's the thing. It's funny because every time I argue with religious people who are like religious apologists and do like the theology stuff, I take the position you do, where I say, for example, it's obvious that pain is bad. Like hell is bad, endless suffering for eternity with no possibility of redemption. We can start from the position that's bad. And then the religious apologist will be like, well, how do you know that's bad? And you need God. It's like, oh my God. And it's funny because I'm taking the Sam Harris position there, and they're taking the Jordan Peterson position. And the reason it's different is, one, because the nature of the conversation, like Jordan Peterson is not advocating then for a particular like Orthodox or Christian interpretation of the Bible. So the argument I have with them is different than the discussion between Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris, because Peterson's claim is like, but can like suffering is bad? Can you say that's an objective fact? Because, and I get where he's coming from, where it's like, well, objective implies independent of the subject, right? I mean, that's fair enough. Yeah. So the subject valuing the reduction of pain, we can say it's objectively true that human beings want to reduce suffering. There's a caveat there that we can discuss that I think is kind of critical, but we can say that. And then it's like, yes, but does that mean that, like we would say 2 + 2 is 4 as an objective fact, that therefore the reduction of suffering is good as an objective fact? It seems like to say that humans value the reduction of suffering, that's a fact. To put that in the same category as 2 + 2, I agree. That makes sense. Those are factual observations about things. But it seems like 2 + 2 is 4 up here. Humans value suffering. But then there's like a lower dimension where it's like, yeah, but can we really say that therefore we ought to reduce suffering and therefore that's an objective fact? I don't know if that to me that's dependent on the subject, because you can have like psychopaths, for example, or you can have the Mephistopheles approach, or the Thanos approach, which is it would be better off if existence did not exist at all. Maybe that is the ought we should be striving toward. Why not wipe every human out from the face of the planet? Because you would reduce suffering in that regard. That's sort of the caveat.
Yeah, I think
I covered two different things there, but
yeah. No, just about the last part, you could argue that it's bad to wipe out everybody in his sleep, because you would then foreclose all the possible future states of happiness. So that's kind of why that would be bad. But to your to the first part of your statement, well, what does it mean to say to ask the question? Well, ought we reduce the suffering of people, or ought we value well-being? There are people like psychopaths who love hurting other people. They're surely of a different opinion, so that kind of introduces a confusion into the whole discussion. But the way Sam Harris views this is that psychopaths are simply, or let's say people like the Taliban, who have a radically different conception of what constitutes well-being, or what is how we ought to live. They're just not invited to the discussion. They're just like you and me, for instance, in relation to to physicists who discuss quantum physics. We're just not in a position to contribute anything.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that to me, yeah, that you understand where that would be less convincing for people like a Taliban or like someone who's a Muslim or a hardcore. Like if Sam Harris says like, you know, if you take your advice from the Bible, you're not welcome to the discussion. It's like, well, you're sort of eliminating a huge chunk of the pot. Then I question the whole exercise of why, you know, if Sam Harris wants to, in his ivory tower, talk about morality in a way that's away from the peons, that's fine.
Well,
but
we're now getting into the practical domain. Like, is it actually practical to? I mean, of course, you can. This is purely theoretical. I mean, you
right.
can't convince somebody.
Yeah, that's fair.
Totally
That's fair.
Question. Yeah.
Yes, that is.
We were not going to convince a psychopath. We're not going to convince the Taliban.
Sure. Okay. Well, then
yeah.
let's stick with. I think because the caveat I made, I think, is actually the crux of the issue. Where I think so. Sam Harris's claim is that it is objectively good. It is an objective fact that we ought to value well-being, and that we should. And I think his deeper claim is we should avoid suffering. I think that's easier to get on board with. It's easier for people to understand. Like it's objectively true that people avoid, because even psychopaths avoid personal suffering, right? Like the fact that suffering is bad is self-evident. You could say that's an objective fact. The issue then is, well, I don't think it logically follows, or I think you can make the case that, okay, if we agree that the objective goal should be to reduce suffering, the Mephistophelian idea, whatever, Thanos. The idea is, well, hey, we can reduce suffering through one of two ways. We can either move towards well-being, which is what Sam Harris argues. But I think you can just as easily make a purely rational, logical case that, well, we should just wipe out all human beings and then all suffering will be gone. And the response is, yes, but you eliminate the potentiality of positive experience. It's like, well, I would say, and I think we know this, people are more sensitive and aversive to negative experience than they are wired to positively approach positive experience. So like, would you rather, like, I'm more afraid, like in theory, I'm more afraid of hell than I am excited to go to heaven. So like, if it was up to me, it's like, well, would you want to roll the dice on whether you go to hell or heaven, or do you just want to not play the game at all? I would say, well, you know what? Honestly, because hell is so bad, and even though heaven is so good, I'm more afraid of the so bad than the so good. I'd rather just wipe out the game entirely. And so I think like, I don't see how it, I do see the argument, but I don't see how it's logically, I don't see how you can rule out the logic of let's wipe out all humanity to eliminate all possibility of suffering. It seems like that is a potential outcome.
Yeah, I mean, some people take this position. I think it's David Benatar's position, the antinatalists. If you're an antinatalist, you're of this opinion that basically life on the whole contains more suffering than pleasurable experiences.
Right.
So then, of course, it would make sense your argument would make sense. But I think I definitely doubt that life on the whole contains more suffering than good. And also, I think it's not Sam Harris' position. And I mean, yeah, we just have no idea. Sorry, I keep.
Yeah, no, I see it. I see the light goes out a little bit, so I know when it happens. So,
but yeah,
yeah, I'm not saying Sam Harris makes that argument, but but I guess I don't see what his rebuttal to that is exactly. What is Sam Harris's rebuttal to the antinatalist argument?
Well, that I'm not really sure about, but well, no. I think even David Benatar, I mean, because he's the most famous progenitor of this position, I think he says his only claim is that we shouldn't bring new life into existence. Like he wouldn't argue we should wipe out existing life. That's not the typical antinatalist position, I think. So I think what you are advocating now is a very kind of fringe thing. I don't think most people would argue that it's okay to just wipe out everyone in his sleep because they won't notice it anyway, and you can do away with their you're relieving their future suffering.
I agree. And normally I am a fan, and I do believe that pointing that out, like saying most people would not, I think that's a valid point to make when we're discussing the practicality of things, which you pointed out earlier. Like there's the objective discussion, then there's the practical discussion. And for the practical discussion, I think it's fair to say most people would not agree with you for that. But for the objective discussion, it's like Galileo was the one who said the sun would, Earth orbited the sun. He was in the minority there. It's like, okay. So the idea that most people would not, if they had a button in front of them that said you can wipe out all existence or you can continue as it is, you say most people would not press the button. I think most people who have lives like you and I, perhaps, that are generally high in well-being, certainly compared to human history and most others. But if you got 100 million atomized, depressed people, because like the rates of suicide are rapidly increasing, and life was so bad for people that you got to that point, I can absolutely see why someone would say, you know what, I will take down the rest of humanity with me to relieve all of them of their suffering. It may not even be like this is for their benefit. It's just, if I'm going to go, everyone else is going to go. And like, again, I don't see how, to me, it's perfectly logical that if the suffering in your life reaches a certain point, that you ending that, like that's a quote unquote logical outcome. I disagree with it because I think logic is for nerds. That's a tagline. That's a joke. But I think there's more to truth than just logic. But I can see the logic, but I think Sam Harris reduces it to logic. And that's kind of you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying, but I don't see the connection to Sam Harris' position. But I agree with your position that individually it can be rational to end one's life. Like, of course, an individual's life can be so excruciatingly painful that it makes sense to end your life. But yeah, I don't think.
Sure. Let's say the general conditions of life on Earth got to the point where it became rational for, let's say, the majority of individuals. Like, you know what? At like the total, if we accept that if an individual's suffering reaches a certain threshold, it becomes rational for that individual to end that suffering by taking their own life. Again, I don't believe that's the case. There's more to this, but YouTube. So let's say if an individual reaches that point, it becomes rational. Okay. We could then proceed with the logic and say, okay, well, if life in general on Earth gets to a certain point where it becomes rational for most individuals, 51% or whatever, there's the suffering in their lives is to the point where it makes sense to just end it or whatever. Well, then it's almost like, well, now then, doesn't that open you up to the idea that, well, it's not objectively true that we ought to value, or we ought to continue life, and we ought to value well-being. The suffering has reached a level in enough people that now it's rational that we ought to just end life on Earth for everyone, right? If we accept it for the individual and we then scale it up, where's the gap in that logic?
No, I agree with the position that it then makes sense to end life on Earth. Yeah, but we should still value well-being, I think. I mean, it doesn't touch on this position of Sam Harris' argument. And I think what Sam Harris' argument is also about is basically just explaining what it means to value something, what it means to, that we ought to do something, right? Because like his position is basically that if you ask the question, right, ought we avoid the worst possible misery for everyone? Like, you don't actually know what ought means, because like the way he sees it is like we're in a situation of possible experience. Like we experience colors right now, sounds, sensations, and thoughts, memories, and We actually have no idea how good it can get or how bad it can get. All we know is that we suffering is bad. Like there,
Right.
if you disagree with that, you have no idea what
I
you're
agree.
talking
I don't think the claim that suffering is bad, I'm willing to state as the most objectively true metaphysical fact, assuming conscious beings. Like if someone says suffering in and of itself is not bad, then we're not. Then we're not. There is no value in having a discussion.
Okay, but then maybe the problem is just our differing conceptions of well-being, because sometimes people they think well-being is kind of like a shallow hedonistic thing to care about. Like, but well-being is simply
the
like
reduction of
it
suffering.
encapsulates everything that could be conceivably understood as not suffering. Like it's just a
I think
end of the spectrum.
Yes, exactly. I think well-being is hard to define. Suffering is easy to define. In fact, it's the most obvious and self-evident thing in all living beings, arguably. So well-being is defined as that state which minimizes suffering. So the statement we ought to value well-being is more accurately construed as we ought to move away from suffering.
Yes.
So then we can forget well-being and just say we ought to move away from suffering. If the fundamental statement is we ought to move away from suffering, which I would agree is like objectively true, and whether or not you rationally articulate it or not, everyone agrees you ought to move away from suffering. Okay, then the question is, that goes back to the original question is, okay, one way to move away from suffering is to value well-being. That's what Sam Harris would agree with. That's what Jordan Peterson would agree with. That's what I would agree with in some form or fashion. They're all kind of on the same page in that regard. But another path to moving away from suffering, if we ought to move away from suffering, one way we can do that is to eliminate the possibility for suffering. And that seems like the antinatalist position. And again, and to me, I don't see the logic. The way that I would approach the antinatalist position is a non-logical, non-objective, non-rational claim, which is that consciousness is a divine, sacred phenomenon that must be protected or valued or something like that. I believe that on the basis of faith. I believe that because a lot of religious traditions, particularly the Bible, says that, and it seems that that idea has survived over a certain period of time. It makes me think it's valid. It resonates with my own life. There's a variety of reasons which are non-logical, non-rational, that I stake that axiom on. But I'm aware that that's a faith claim. And if you don't acknowledge that and say, well, no, I'm not arriving at that. You don't need that faith claim to address the antinatalist position. I'd be curious to know what the objective rational argument is against the antinatalist position, because I don't see it. If we ought to move away from suffering.
I don't understand what about this is a faith claim. Like, can you explain that in more detail? Because I didn't like. Of course, we have consciousness. We have privileged access to our consciousness.
Yep.
That's the only thing we can't be confused about. Like, it's possible to live in the Matrix. We're maybe just a simulation on an alien supercomputer.
Yep.
So
I'm increasingly believing that, by the way, with all the artificial intelligence stuff. But yeah, we can't doubt that we are experiencing something. I can't doubt that. I can doubt you're experiencing something, but I can't doubt my own experience.
Yeah. So where exactly does the faith come in?
It's sort of the same faith that you're conscious. I don't know that you're conscious, and I'll never be able to prove it. Right?
Oh, okay. So that's what you mean. Okay, that's basically the reason why you ought to value the well-being of other people, because you're not 100% sure if they are really conscious, if they are not just robots. So you're making like a leap of faith that it makes sense to care about other people. Yeah.
I think I believe that. I conceptualize it as like, I am conscious. This to me is a miracle. It's fundamentally irrational. The fact of existence is fundamentally irrational. I think that's like Nietzsche and all that shit, and Heidegger, which I agree with. And so the faith claim is one that I derive from an irrational, external kind of view, as, oh, well, there's this religious tradition and there's all these experiences I have in my life. which aren't like super profound. Like I've never talked to God as far as I know. But yeah, there's a variety of non-rational reasons why I would regard my consciousness as a miracle. And I do take that leap of faith and assume it's the case in other people. But that is a leap of faith. You understand that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. It is.
Although
I think it's a reasonable position to take, because you can put my brain, for instance, in an MRI scanner, and you see its basic structure is very similar to yours. So why wouldn't I have a conscious experience? And why wouldn't apes and other lower mammals have also a conscious experience? Mm-hmm. Because we evolved, from that. We have a common lineage. So it's I agree. It is a leap of faith, but it's a very reasonable position, I think, to take, just based on evidence and logic.
Right. But the idea that I should value your conscious experience, that's a bigger leap of faith. Like, if I could get away with it logically, why don't I operate in such a way that affords me and my family and my tribe? Let's say I have a tribe of 150 people. Why not act in a way that affords me all kinds of resources at your expense? Why not take slaves, and why not invade other people's lands if it benefits me and my tribe?
Right? So you think we need like a common religious framework in order to value other people outside of our tribe? Is that?
I think so. Depending on how you define religious, but I think so. If we're tying religion to morality and making like and when we're talking about the fundamental axioms, that's in the domain of the religious, then yes, I would say absolutely. We all need to be in order for society to be stable, which is the practical reason we're having this discussion, or whatever. We need to all be on the same page axiomatically to some degree. Like, for example, the idea that human consciousness is intrinsically valuable.
Yeah, the tricky part about that is that religion is often the cause for tribalism and these.
Oh, of course.
Dehumanizing the people on the other side of the valley because they don't believe in the same God. I mean, so yeah.
Yes, but I would say good religions, or religions that are more successful, they actually do the opposite, in that they don't eliminate. Tribalism is built into human beings. It predated religion, obviously. So what good religions do is they don't say. Some religions, yes, the other is bad. People who aren't us need to die. Blah blah blah, all that stuff. But the good religions, the religions that are most successful, not that those are inherently the same, but they break down tribal barriers by saying we're all part of the same tribe. Everyone is a child of God. The Muslims believe everyone is a submitter before Allah, the brotherhood of man. So it's precisely what religions are sophisticated in, that their teachings, obviously depends on how you interpret it, but in the way that it's been interpreted in many ways, is that we are all children of God, hence missionaries going out and converting. And so that's actually a morally sophisticated position that religions put forward, right? And I would say that's sort of you have to do that to some degree, because otherwise how do you overcome tribalism unless you assimilate it into saying we're all part of the same tribe? And I don't know how you do that that's a narrative to some degree. And I think religious narratives are the things that provide it. So that's the practical utility of religion that I like.
Right. Yeah. Well, it definitely has a practical utility. I don't think I wouldn't deny that, and Sam Harris doesn't deny it either. But it's just that there are commonalities among the religions, and I think we should try to find what is common among these, and this is what spirituality, I think, is about. Because if it's great to expand this circle of empathy, but at some point you bump into the border of the I don't know. Let's say in the Middle Ages, the Christendom bumps at the border of the Ottoman Empire, and then you have this universality, but only up until you meet people that have a different faith. So it's in this 21st century, I think we have to get rid of these provincialities, because we're all connected through the internet, and we have to get at a position like Sam Harris, I think, where we just say, yeah, we have to do away with all this, divisive, provincial ideas that can't really be justified or communicated to other people, aside from just force or indoctrination.
Sure. Well, I think like, for example, gathering Christian theologians and Muslim theologians and Jewish theologians and Hindus and Buddha or whatever, and having a cross theological discussion, like, for example, like Jordan Peterson does with the Exodus series. I don't know if you've seen any clips of that, where he's like around a table and there's like Dennis Prager and there's some Jewish rabbis and some Christians. It's like, I as far as I know, I've never seen that publicly. And it's interesting to see where their disagreements are, because it's like, oh, interesting. Dennis Prager has one interpretation of the Bible that is very at odds with Jordan Peterson. That's interesting, because the theological disputes are the most fundamental ones. So I'm in favor of that. And look, it's funny. Like I said, I feel like I'm in my day-to-day life, I'm 80% Sam Harris, 20% Jordan Peterson. And then when it comes to the objective discussion, if that's the right word, whatever, the more philosophical discussion, I'm more 80% Peterson, 20% Harris. Where like Peterson is hesitant about saying, I don't like it. Sam Harris asked him, what do you think the odds are that Jesus literally rose from the dead, right? Anything's possible, but put a percentage on it. Like, how about almost zero? Not zero, but almost zero. I'm perfectly comfortable, me, right now, saying, of course, the odds that Jesus literally rose from the dead are almost zero. But Peterson was hesitant about that. I don't understand that, which is why, I don't think he's being dishonest, because I've seen no evidence of that, and I'm well aware I know very little compared to either Sam Harris or Jordan Peterson. So I'm sure he has his reasons. But that's where I'm more like Sam Harris on that. Like, we can say pretty clearly, like, Jesus did not rise from the dead. I don't know. I feel like I can still have a consistent worldview while still acknowledging that Jesus was not literally rose from the dead. That makes sense?
Interesting that you think that, because I think that's a pretty foundational part of Jordan Peterson's worldview. I think he says the reason why he's hesitant to just say, yeah, probably not, he's probably not resurrected, is because he thinks, he says, yeah, for some reason this idea just doesn't seem to disappear.
Right.
And that he kind of takes this as evidence then of its utility, and the utility of religion and certain religious beliefs as evidence of its
truthfulness. Right. Pragmatism.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Based pragmatism. I'm a huge, if I call myself, I generally avoid calling myself any ism or any in besides P.F. Jungian, but I might call myself a pragmatist. That's the only thing I would consider labeling myself. But yeah, it's interesting.
But then why don't you just say, yeah, Jesus was resurrected? I mean, or just say, he so many people believe in the resurrection of Jesus, so why not just take it on board in your beliefs?
It's like the archetypes. It's like, hold on, why do these same exact patterns show up independent of one another, cross-culturally, cross-temporally, and in eerily similar formats, like the Inuit trickster god and the Maasai people's trickster, whatever, in Africa and in all these different, you can look in the most isolated tribes, and yet they have remarkably similar stories, flood myths, all these different things. And the question is why? I think the answer is because human beings are wired with a pre-structured psychological worldview. That's the archetypes. The archetypes are the structure of the mind that are inherent to human beings that make us not tabula rasa, not just blank slates where we can just be imprinted. Okay, and the question is, why did those particular archetypal structures develop? It's because evolution selected for them. And then why did evolution select for them? Could be spandrels. That this is I'm not suggesting that there's objections to this logical chain, but the logical chain, as I understand it, is The archetypal patterns emerge because natural selection selected for those archetypal patterns, because something about those archetypal patterns corresponded to the reality that natural selection is operant in, right? And Jordan Peterson says something like, reality is that which selects. If you take a Darwinian perspective, if you believe evolution is real, then reality is that which imposes selection pressures. And if the archetypes emerged out of those selection pressures, there's some correspondence between the archetypes and objective reality as such. And what that means exactly, Jordan Peterson's like, well, therefore maybe Jesus resurrected. I don't buy that. I don't see how that works. But I do see how it's like, okay, the hero archetype emerges in all these stories. What's the moral of that? And then therefore, is that true? Does consciousness give rise to reality? Like that's one interpretation of the archetypal stories, I think. It's like, well, certainly consciousness gives rise to my reality. And if I die, does that mean you continue to exist? That's a leap of faith just as much as assuming you're conscious, right? So the answers to these are not obvious, which is why I'm sympathetic to Peterson's hesitance. Not his Twitter antics, though. Fuck all that. But you get what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. Yeah. No, it's a valid position. But do you know about Jordan Peterson's position with regards to sexual selection? Because that is something he mentioned in his discussion with Sam Harris. Not one of those 4 discussions that they did live. It's a podcast on the Making Sense, and there he kind of gives this example of the sexual selection of I think female deer that are interested in males with very large antlers. And this then had this kind of was a runaway process whereby the males got larger and larger antlers until ran totally counter to natural selection, because they got them eaten more easily by the wolves or other predators. And then he kind of takes this idea and puts it like, I think he uses this as a argument for God or some spiritual. I just want to know. I want to have the explanation from you, because I don't really understand. But what he says is that that's kind of like the female brain selects males because of their, I don't know. His rise in hierarchy. So I'm just gonna let you speak, because I think more about
this. His claim is that consciousness acting through sexual selection, so assuming that some form of proto-consciousness or consciousness existed in its a prototypical form prior to human beings, so whatever we were, Australopithecus and all that, that sexual selection could also be described as consciousness making its choices on who passes their genes on, right? Because, in theory, although, well, let me continue now before I lay out my criticisms. So in theory, who you choose to mate with is a conscious decision. Although there's a big element of unconscious to that, because like who you find attractive is out of your control in a lot of ways. So there's some pushback on that. But the idea is, everywhere you go, in every tribe across the world, human beings organize themselves into hierarchies because they're tribal. Just like primates organize themselves into hierarchies. And what happens is, the way to survive and the way to ascend those hierarchies, the strategy is similar, because human beings are similar in their embodied form. A human in Sri Lanka is similar to a human in Russia, in Africa. So everywhere you go, there's going to be consistency across how humans behave and what behaviors are optimal in order to pass on genes. So if you're a good hunter, that's going to be selected for across culturally, right? Because you're able to produce food for your tribe. So what Peterson's claim is that consciousness acting through sexual selection identified those males, because that's what sexual selection would be, the female proclivity to select males. Those males that acted out a pattern of behavior that was conducive to survival. So if a male was a particularly good hunter, he would be selected for. But the male who was a good hunter and was also generous and shared his food would be selected for over the person who was just good at hunting. And so the feedback loop was consciousness causing females through sexual selection to pick males who had behaviors that were optimal for the tribe. And then that person would reproduce, and it would be a feedback loop. And so the hero archetype is that behavior that is conducive to, that increases fitness, just from a purely evolutionary perspective. And sexual selection was making its choices in regard to which males should reproduce. It's those that engage in this heroic archetypal behavior. And then that just looped out into the hero myth that we see in religions, that abstracted all the way to the hero of, well, what's the ultimate heroic behavior a human being can engage in? It's something like honest confrontation with reality, truthful confrontation with that individual, which does not lie, does not manipulate, and truthfully confronts reality and confronts danger and confronts the predator rather than hides. Right? That's like the evolutionary argument for consciousness making its selection, rather than just indiscriminate mating or something like that. Does that make sense to some degree?
Yeah, although I think the way you described it, you almost don't need the distinction between sexual selection and natural selection, because like you use like men, for instance, that are great hunters,
provides adaptive value.
Provides an adaptive value. So yeah,
right.
Then it makes sense that they would be sexually selected too. So like somebody who gets just eaten by a bear can't be sexually selected. So what I thought that Peterson was trying to argue is that like sometimes sexual selection goes against the pressures of nature.
Yeah,
so
like antler deers.
Yeah.
Right, like antler deers or peacock tails is the other classic example. It's like giant peacock tails make it more difficult for the peacock to survive. So why would a female want to mate with a male who their kids are going to be more likely to die because they have this giant peacock tail? And there's a couple different theories. It's like, well, it's a marker for health. It's like advertisement. If you go to a restaurant and has a super expensive sign or, decoration, that's a marker of quality. So it's kind of this, it's a similar idea. But yeah, it's a runaway feedback loop. Although I think the issue is that if you put sexual selection under the domain of natural selection, it implies some level of determinism. And this is what I would ask. If I could ask Jordan Peterson a question, this would be one of them. Is like, are you sure that sexual selection is consciousness making choices? Because it seems like who you're attracted to is an unconscious deterministic process. Like we're attracted to people who are healthier and younger and all that different stuff or whatever. So is that really consciousness making its choices in who reproduces rather than it being a phenomenon of natural selection, like you're saying? I guess I don't immediately see I don't see how it underpins or undermines like the other things we might disagree on in terms of that is still the evolution of the archetypal pattern of behavior, right? That makes sense, right? I don't think you would have a disagreement with that.
No, yeah, no,
right.
I just wanted to know if you knew maybe like why he uses this argument, because I thought it was kind of disconnected from his other stuff that he said in this podcast he did with Sam Harris, where they were arguing about what is true, and
oh yes,
is that the pragmatist position?
Yeah, it's like the first one they did where they got like caught and everyone hated it.
Yeah.
I loved that.
It wasn't so bad. I liked it, actually.
I know, it's fun. It's like, well, it's a semantic thing. It's like, no, it's the fundamental disagreement here. So they should get into that. Yeah, I haven't listened to it in a while, but that was yeah. And look, there are open-ended questions. This is why I'm still 20% Sam Harris and 80% my day-to-day life is like Sam Harris asked something to the effect of like, so if it turns out, so like we understand that if you split an atom, it causes a nuclear reaction, and a huge bomb blows up. So if the Darwinian theory of truth is that, it's not true unless it facilitates survival, or that's a extremely over reductive simplified view. the Darwinian / pragmatist view. It's true if it's useful, or it's kind of like, well, so you're, and Sam Harris asked Peterson this, and he kind of got caught and lost a little bit. Was like, so if we create, if humanity does get wiped out in a nuclear holocaust, does that mean it's not true that when you split an atom, it blows up? And Peterson's kind of like, well, I don't remember what he said exactly, but it wasn't very convincing. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. You can't just say, and obviously I know that saying what is true is what is useful. Like, that's a reduction. There's some utility to that formulation, but I don't fully understand that.
But isn't this just like a killer argument against pragmatism then? For me, it is. I mean, what do you? What's the counter to that?
Is it the killer argument against? Well, so the reason I would say no is because I know that argument, and yet this is a pure bullshit. I'm pulling this out of my ass, so forgive me. But like the reason I don't think it's a killer argument is because I know of that counter argument, and yet I still believe in pragmatism. That's what I'm thinking right now. I have to figure out if I'm justified in believing that.
But because I think it's the reason why it's just like a bad a way to think about truth is because you can't then have like the distinction between something being true or untrue but useful and true but not useful. Like, for instance, there are things just not worth knowing. Like you have to be able to talk about these things. Huh?
Like the number of hairs on my head. I think that's what they would bring up. Like there's facts out there that are true. That,
right. But I think even an even better example would be like the way to synthesize smallpox. Like that's the example Sam Harris always gives. Like, why would you, of course, maybe, yeah, it's true, but it's an idiotic idea to put it out there on the internet. It's because you could then have people, introducing this into society and kill people, and then
yes,
but it still would be true that this is how you synthesize smallpox.
Right.
And everyone, you have to maybe talk about these. And if the pragmatist position kind of robs you of the ability to make this distinction, I think
at the level of metaphysics, pragmatism breaks down because metaphysics gets so complicated that again, like we were talking about earlier, is like the axioms you start from for anything are faith-based. Like, are we in a matrix, or are you conscious, and all that. Like, that's a metaphysical issue of whether or not you're conscious, and there's no way to objectively decide. We can always get measurements. We can you'd say it's logical to assume, and I agree with you. But like, I could create like an android or something that has a very similar brain structure, and like we still don't know if it's conscious. The artificial intelligence issue is going to force us to think about the metaphysics deeper. So at the level of like, what is the fundamental nature of reality? The pragmatic answer to that would be, I don't think you can eat. Like, that's a question that's almost, you can't analyze it objectively. That's the pragmatic response. So like, is it true? So if an atom is split, does it blow up humanity? And does that mean it wasn't true? It's like, well, again, if I stop existing, does that mean that, the temperature of the boiling point of water is 212 degrees? It's like, well, I don't fucking know, because in order for the fact of the water to boils at 212 degrees, in order for that to even be recognized, there has to be a conscious agent observing it. It's like, this gets in the whole quantum physics shit, where it's like, you need and I don't understand any of this, but like, you need an observer, and as soon as you measure something, it changes it. So like, arguably, like, there's always going to be a subject involved, so therefore the objectivity itself doesn't ever exist. We're always intertwined with subjectivity. So,
but so I don't know. I guess the existence of reality, it sounds like.
What's that?
you're doubting the existence of reality. It sounds like it's
I absolutely doubt that if I stopped existing, here's what I believe. If I stopped existing tomorrow or in 5 minutes, do I believe that the universe would continue to, do I believe you would continue to exist? It's like, well, you are a concept in my mind. I know you're like the Donald Hoffman stuff, like consciousness. Yeah. Okay. Like reality is made up of a bunch of interrelationships between conscious agents at like the level of microparticles or whatever. I don't know what that means. But it's certainly but every time I hear it talked about, I'm like, this makes it sound like if I stop existing, it's not obvious that reality will continue to exist, because the thing that you're asking me will continue to exist requires me to exist in order to conceptualize it. Right? Reality, as whatever we mean when we're talking about reality, only exists because I'm here perceiving it. So if I stop perceiving it, it's almost like, well, no, obviously it wouldn't continue to exist, because whatever your experience of reality is would be gone with you. Right? And it's a very like solipsistic kind of arrogant thing. Like if you die, I'm going to continue to exist. I don't care whether you believe, reality will continue to exist if you're not around. But that goes into the issue of, well, that's why I can't be certain that you're conscious, so to speak, and it gets into this very like non-pragmatic way of thinking about things, because it's like, well, assuming that hell is bad and assuming that we should move away from suffering and all that, if that is the objective truth, then it's all of what is true is just a function of what gets us further to that fundamental drive. The fundamental moral injunction is we ought to move away from suffering, right? And so the question of whether or not something is true, then, I know this is where it gets, and I'm aware, even as I'm talking to you, I'm recapitulating things I barely understand myself. I guess the best way, if your goal was to, not that I'm saying this is, but like if someone's goal was to try and explain why pragmatism breaks down, I would have to see it break down at the level of like, I don't know, the level of practicality, you know what I'm saying? We're like, okay, let's say I'm wrong at the fundamental nature. What is that robbing me of? What difference does it make whether or not I claim that truth is a function of utility at the metaphysical level? Like, okay, I can't, that robs me of my abilities to make metaphysical claims. And maybe I can't do quantum physics that well. But does it rob me of anything else of value? I don't know. And that is a pragmatic question. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
I know I'm spewing everything.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it is we get into the realm of very impractical things and just general abstract concepts. And so if you're just talking about ordinary stuff, then truth and what is the word I'm looking for? What is true and what is useful is going to align. But I think if you're going to have a philosophical discussion, then you have to be able to make a distinction here. And if you're in the pragmatist position, just doesn't allow you to do that. And I think thought experiments like the one about the atom bomb, they show pretty conclusively that you just can't, that this position is not a good one, I think. But I don't know, maybe we...
Yeah, well, I would look to like Donald Hoffman in terms of like, because he would claim that the objective reality is like time, what is it? The phrase is like space-time is dead. Like that's the new like tagline in physics or whatever. That's what he said. I don't know if that's true or not, but like, okay, space-time does not exist as we understand it. It's like, okay, well, then that would back up the claim that the atom getting split doesn't actually, that's not fundamentally true in some deep fundamental sense.
But I mean, the way I remember Donald Hoffman's position is not that he says okay, there's no truth, or that he has a pragmatist conception of truth. It's just that he says evolution didn't design us to perceive truth in any accurate way. Not only that we are bad at perceiving truth, we are not in a position at all, like we have this to perceive it. We have this simulation. Our brain is simulating reality and purposely hiding it, kind of like a desktop interface, because it's the simulated version is just the more useful thing to get through life, and because its evolution, all it selected for is to get our genes into the next generation. It didn't select for perceiving reality in any accurate way. And I think he demonstrated this with like mathematical models, where it was like the ones that just perceived fitness points, whatever that is, were the most effective. But then he of course doesn't deny the underlying truth. Like he says, of course it is existent. It's just we may never find out about it, because evolution hasn't selected for.
Well, that's
for
sort
that
of
capability.
and I would say that's sort of, and I haven't followed Donald Hoffman enough to be certain about this. I'm citing this as sort of evidence that I pull up ad hoc, at least, because I haven't thought through my worldview down to the metaphysical foundations of reality. Because I would say that point exactly is like, well, if we accept that we know that human beings cannot be able to understand the fundamental metaphysical foundations of reality because we were selected for by evolution, or something something approximating evolution, whether by the hand of God or whatnot. Evolution, as we understand it, appears to be how we got here. And if we accept that, then we can't understand the metaphysical foundations of reality. And that's why, like Sam Harris pointing out that, well, if the atom splits and it wipes out humanity, well, that's not useful, therefore it must not be true. It's like that thought experiment is operating at a level of metaphysics that I say is a priori inaccessible to humans for the reasons that Donald Hoffman gave, right? And that's why I don't find it as a defeat. I don't find it as a convincing defeater, only because I don't believe that that question could be answered. I don't believe the answer to that question being yes or no affects it in the practical sense of motivation. Because this is like the key thing that underlies everything. I'm not interested in just what is the truth. I'm not just interested in. I'm just here to explore the idea for what the idea is. I'm here to, like, the reason I have these conversations, the reason I'm interested in anything is because I believe that the answers to pursuing these questions provide utility. What the nature of language and the brain is helps us understand how we should act, and it helps us, decide what is ethical and decide how to operate in a complex world. I don't care about I don't need to develop a fully metaphysical understanding of the world to be able to do some of that. And so that's sort of my philosophy is inherently pragmatic in the philosophical sense, as in pragmatism, because of that. And so it's like, well, but Paul, you can't access you can't effectively talk about these metaphysical questions. I would say, well, as a pragmatist, I don't care about those metaphysical questions, whether or not those are. It's like the Wittgenstein idea of like, well, some philosophical questions they're not real questions at all. What's north of the North Pole? Well, it sounds like a real question, but it's not real. What time is it on the sun? It sounds like a real question, but it's not real. Is it true? Is it what? It's like the metaphysical stuff. It gets complicated. You get what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So
yeah.
can I ask you on the more personal basis, what is your goal with your channel? What do you strive to do?
Yeah, I can answer that. I just wanted to say it's
sure. Sorry,
getting kind of late here, so I think, yeah.
Oh, we want to wrap up here? Yeah, in the next 10 minutes.
5-10 minutes.
Okay, perfect.
So my goal with this channel, I have really no idea. I just started this because I like having philosophical discussions, and my friends get tired of them pretty easily, and so
very practical of you. Yes, I'm in the same boat.
Right. And also, like, I have some of these ideas that I just wanted to test out, like if they actually make sense, if I can communicate them effectively. So I think YouTube is a good way to do that, because then you get in the comments somebody calling you out, no, this doesn't make sense what you're saying, and so that's kind of a good way to kind of refine your ideas and see if they actually make sense, or if you've understood them. Of course, the ideas that I talk about on my channel aren't my ideas; they're just ideas mostly of Sam Harris or related philosophers that
Sure,
that
but
I
you're
find
synthesizing your own experience. I mean, you're deciding what to talk about, and that
yeah,
as soon as you
right,
do that, you're bringing yourself into it.
right, yeah.
Cool.
That's what anybody is ever doing. I mean, if Sam Harris or any other philosopher is no different. It's just like a filter through which to perceive reality, or to see what is interesting. And I think the Making Sense podcast is a really just good filter for caring for seeing what is important, I think, to care
Sure.
about.
Yeah, well, I kind of want to go back, and I might actually do that while I do some chores. I might go back and listen to this first Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson podcast and think about those, of like, what did Jordan Peterson say when he was asked about the atom not splitting? There was another example that Sam Harris put to him that I don't think was very good, but the nuclear atom one I think was better, and I gotta check that one out again. But
yeah, no, I love these discussions between those two guys. I think I watched the live discussions, like, I think 3 times
oh yeah,
at least.
the Pangburn ones in Ireland and all that.
Yeah,
I think I've watched those at least 2 or 3 times through, and maybe I'll have to do that again.
yeah.
But, actually, that might be some good. That might make some good content for the YouTube channels. Like, let's go.
Yeah, you should do that. Yeah.
Rehash those.
And it's especially interesting to see how your perception of the discussion changes from the first time to the third.
Right.
Like, the first time I thought Jordan Peterson was like kind of just an annoying guy who just interrupted or said irrelevant points. But then I got more and more sympathetic to his position. Probably for you, it was the other way around. Or...
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you see his debate with Matt Dillahunty?
That was really bad.
I know. So the first time I watched that, although it's funny, first time I watched that, I'm like, oh my god, Peterson. He probably. I think that was a time when he was sick and all that, and he was probably super irritated, and he talks about getting depressed and all that shit and all. Like, whatever. But he came off like awful in that debate. I'm like, god damn, he just got he got his ass beat by Matt Dillahunty. But then I watched it 2 or 3 more times, and I was like, damn, like rhetorically, Peterson came off like an asshole. But the fundamental points he was getting at, I actually didn't think Matt Dillahunty addressed, and I didn't see that until watching it like a second or third time, also while high. But then for other Jordan Peterson ones, I'm like, oh, you know what? Like the Sam Harris thing of like, he asked him straight up, what is the percentage chance that Jesus literally rose from the dead? And he doesn't say. He doesn't say almost. He doesn't agree with almost certainly not. And I'm like, okay, there's a chink in the armor that needs to be explored further. So it's interesting. Yes, definitely going when you read books. I love doing it with books because I like annotate them. So it's really cool to go back and read a book that I annotated like 2 years ago. It's, oh, why did I annotate this part in particular? And then it regrows in my mind. So yes, I may have to do that today or tomorrow or something.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Thank you for the discussion.
Yes.
Today. It was really cool to talk to you.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can do this again sometime.
Definitely.